the sky cracked open in an explosion of light. A fiery streak tore across the heavens, lighting up the entire landscape below. It wasn't a comet, nor a meteor. It was something much worse. A signal, a message that Earth had not been prepared to receive. In the small town of Halcyon, just beyond the forest's edge, a retired military officer named Carl Wright stood in his backyard, watching the strange event unfold. The streak of light was fast, too fast, almost as if it was controlled. His instincts screamed at him to seek cover, but he was frozen, his eyes locked on the object as it cut through the sky. It wasn't a falling star. It was something more deliberate, more dangerous. He felt the rumble of the impact before he heard it, the ground beneath his feet trembling like a living creature. The world seemed to hold its breath for a moment, and then came the deafening sound of an explosion. The distant forest near the crash site erupted in a wave of smoke and debris. Carl's heart raced. He knew this was no ordinary accident. Something alien had just touched down on Earth. Hours later, the military cordoned off the area surrounding the crash site. A small but elite team of scientists, government agents, and military personnel were on site, gathering data. Among them was Dr. Max Carter, a neurobiologist with a reputation for solving problems that no one else could. He'd been called in to provide an analysis of the strange phenomenon, but he had no idea what he was about to uncover. Dr. Carter, right this way, one of the agents said, guiding him through a hastily constructed field camp. Max was intrigued but cautious. There was something off about the place. The air felt thick, as if something dangerous lurked just beyond the veil of normalcy. He could sense it in the way the soldiers moved, alert and on edge, eyes constantly darting to the horizon. When they reached the site of the crash, Max's breath caught in his throat. The remains of the spacecraft were unlike anything he'd ever seen. It was sleek, metallic, yet the material wasn't any metal known to man. It was smooth, almost organic, like it had grown from some otherworldly seed. "What do we have here, Doctor?" a voice called from behind him. It was Colonel Jacobs, the lead officer overseeing the operation. Max didn't answer immediately. He was too busy inspecting the wreckage. "It's not from here," he finally said. His mind raced as he observed the intricate markings etched into the craft's surface, alien symbols, foreign and incomprehensible, yet oddly familiar. A sense of unease washed over him. The air around them was charged with an unnatural static, a hum vibrating deep within his chest. He reached out instinctively, fingers brushing against the ship's surface. The moment his skin made contact, a shiver shot up his spine. Something was inside the ship. "What's that?" Max asked, pointing to a strange, cylindrical container jutting out of the wreckage. It was glowing softly, an eerie green light pulsating from within. Jacobs followed his gaze. "We're not sure yet, but we suspect it's a form of biological substance. Possibly some sort of chemical weapon. Or something worse," Max muttered under his breath, a dark thought taking root in his mind. He wasn't just dealing with an alien ship. He was dealing with something far more dangerous. The moment he approached the container, a surge of energy swept through the air, crackling like electricity. Max instinctively stepped back, his heart racing. Something inside was alive. Not just biological, but sentient. "Doctor, we need to contain it," Jacobs said, urgency in his voice. "This could be the breakthrough we've been waiting for, or the worst thing that's ever happened to us." Max nodded, a cold realization settling into the pit of his stomach. The aliens had arrived, and they hadn't come in peace. Days passed, and Max couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The alien ship had been transported to a secret underground facility, where a team of experts worked tirelessly to decipher its contents. Yet, as they studied it, something strange began to happen. The people who had come into contact with the wreckage, the ones who had been near the glowing container, began to change. At first, it was subtle. The agents, soldiers, and scientists started acting oddly, more compliant, more docile. Max noticed that their eyes lacked the usual spark of independent thought. It was as if something was overriding their personalities, their will to act on their own. "What's happening to them?" Max asked Jacobs, his voice laced with concern. Jacobs, usually unflappable, appeared unnerved. We don't know. But I think it's linked to that serum. The one inside the container? Max's eyes narrowed. Jacobs nodded grimly. It's a mind control agent, we believe. The aliens were testing it. It's a perfect tool for domination. The serum had been designed to affect the brain, manipulating the very essence of free will. It was a sophisticated formula, one that controlled its subjects with surgical precision. The Zinther had perfected it over millennia, but what they hadn't counted on was the resilience of the human mind. Max couldn't help but feel a sense of dread. This wasn't just an invasion of Earth, it was a battle for humanity's very soul. The Zinther might have been able to control entire species, but humanity was different. We weren't easily dominated. But what if the serum worked? What if the Zinther succeeded in taking control of Earth, not through force, but through our minds? Max wasn't sure how much time had passed when it all came to a head. His once sharp colleagues, now under the influence of the serum, had begun to spread through the underground facility like a disease. They were no longer individuals, they were extensions of the will of the Zinther. And the worst part? It was only a matter of time before the serum spread beyond the facility, reaching the wider world. Max was the only one who seemed to retain control. His mind, his will, was stronger than the serum's effects, at least for now. But for how long? As he sprinted through the facility's narrow corridors, trying to escape the throngs of mind-controlled agents who now chased him, one thought raced through his mind. The Zinther's mind control serum was perfect until it met humanity. Dr. Max Carter paced through the dimly lit corridor of the underground research facility, his mind racing. Every step felt heavier than the last as he processed the reality of the situation. The Zinther's mind control serum, once thought to be an invincible weapon, had begun its merciless spread across humanity. The agents, military personnel, and scientists who had been exposed to it were now nothing more than puppets, their wills completely overridden by the alien influence. But there was something different about the humans. Something unique. Max had discovered that while the serum worked efficiently on other species, humans, unpredictable, resilient, and deeply stubborn, seemed to offer an unexpected resistance. It was as if the serum had underestimated the human mind's ability to break free, or at the very least, to fight back. The longer Max observed the affected individuals, the more he realized that the serum, despite its perfection in the Zinther's eyes, was far from flawless on humans. He felt the subtle vibrations of this new discovery, a flicker of hope in the midst of impending chaos. The glow from his workstation cast long shadows on the walls as Max sat at his desk, analyzing the data collected from the serum's initial tests. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, racing through complex biological data. He needed answers, fast. Every test he ran suggested that the serum's effect on human brains was weaker than it should have been. Something about the structure of the serum's biochemical agents failed to fully penetrate the complexity of human neurochemistry. It didn't matter how much the aliens had perfected their formula, it wasn't an invincible tool against human autonomy. This was the breakthrough Max had been waiting for, but the urgency was impossible to ignore. He couldn't allow this knowledge to remain locked away. The Zinther had already turned a small group of people into mind-controlled pawns, and if he couldn't act quickly, the serum would spread throughout the world, rendering humanity helpless. Meanwhile, the Zinther, who had been observing humanity for decades, were blind to the growing resistance. Their superior intellect had led them to develop the serum with the utmost precision, fully confident in its ability to subdue the human race. They had conquered planets and enslaved countless species using this very serum. They never expected that something as simple as human unpredictability could foil their plans. The leader of the Zinther, High Commander Vazar, sat in the command center aboard their hovering mothership, deep in conversation with his most trusted scientist, Vralik. Vralik, Vazar's voice was thick with authority. Why have we not seen the immediate compliance in the human subjects that we expected? The serum is flawless. The control should be total. Vralik, a dark-skinned alien with sharp features and calculating eyes, adjusted his glasses as he analyzed the data. The serum's effects are somewhat erratic on Earth's inhabitants. We believe it's due to their neurobiology. Human minds are different. Less predictable than what we're used to. The resistance is negligible, but we must address this anomaly before it becomes a threat. Vizar's eyes glinted with frustration. I did not come to this planet for failure. The humans must be controlled. Vralik gave a slight nod. Yes, Commander. We will fine-tune the serum's formula to adapt to their unique biology. It's not perfect yet, but we are close. Back on Earth, Max was deep in thought, his fingers trembling over the data. He knew this was it, the one piece of information that could turn the tide in humanity's favor. The resistance wasn't futile. It was just beginning. He quickly reached out to his trusted colleague, a brilliant but eccentric hacker named Ella West. She had been working with Max on cracking the encrypted communications between the alien fleet and their ground operatives. If anyone could break through the defenses of the Zinther's network, it was Ella. Max needed her to act fast. The Zinther might have had the advantage, but now, it was time for humans to turn the tables. Max, what's going on? Ella's voice crackled over the comms as she answered the call. I think I've found something, Max said, his tone urgent. The serum, it's not perfect. It doesn't work on us like it should. There's resistance, real resistance. Ella's voice was filled with disbelief. You're telling me it's failing? How? It's the human brain. We're not like the other species they've conquered, Max replied, pacing in tight circles around the room. The serum's designed to break down independent thought, but there's a problem. Human brains don't yield as easily as they expected. If we can exploit this weakness, we could reverse the effects. We could fight back. Ella was silent for a moment, her mind processing the new information. You're saying we've got a chance? That we're not totally screwed? Max allowed himself a faint smile. Exactly. But we have to move fast. I need you to work on bypassing their communications. We need to know what they're planning and how we can stop it. I've got a team of survivors here, but we need more than just information. We need a countermeasure. Ella's voice turned grim. You're asking for a miracle, Max. But if anyone can pull this off, it's us. Then we better get started. Max's thoughts raced as he turned back to his workstation. The Zinther were methodical in their approach. Precision was their greatest asset. But they had made one critical mistake. They had underestimated humanity. The very thing that made humans so difficult to control, their unpredictability, was now their greatest advantage. It wasn't just the resistance Max had to worry about. There was also the fear that the Zinther would push their experiments further, finding ways to force compliance, to eliminate any weaknesses in the serum's formula. The only way to prevent humanity from falling into total subjugation was to break their stranglehold before they refined their serum into something even more potent. Max's mind whirred with possibilities. He couldn't fight the Zinther on his own. But if he could find a way to activate the human resistance, if he could connect with those who were still unaffected by the serum's grasp, they might stand a chance. The first step, though, was simple: survive. And for that, he needed Ella's help. In the next few days, as Max worked tirelessly to perfect his analysis, the situation outside the lab continued to grow worse. The infected humans, now under full control of the Zinther, were deployed to suppress any opposition. Soldiers, civilians, and even former allies of Max's team began acting in ways they never would have before. The resistance was scattered, but they were not broken. Max had seen it firsthand. The serum's effect could be mitigated with the right intervention, but time was running out. The Zinther were relentless, and the serum's power was spreading faster than Max had anticipated. And then came the breakthrough. In a small room at the heart of the facility, Max completed the formula. He had found a counteragent, a way to disrupt the mind control serum signal. It was based on the very thing that had made humans resistant in the first place: the unpredictability of their neural patterns. With the formula in hand, Max knew he had one shot to turn the tide. But the Zinther were closing in. The walls of the underground facility felt like they were closing in on Dr. Max Carter as he looked over the counteragent formula he had created. His fingers hovered over the data pad, replaying the simulations in his mind. The counteragent could reverse the serum's effects if it was administered soon enough, but there was a significant risk. The serum's influence over the human mind was potent, and the longer the resistance waited, the more difficult it would be to break free from its grip. They had to act and fast. Outside, the storm of war had already begun. Max could hear the distant thrum of the Zinther-controlled soldiers marching toward the facility. They were relentless, methodical machines in human flesh, carrying out their orders without hesitation. Max had seen firsthand how quickly the serum could take hold. He was one of the few who remained immune, but he was beginning to wonder for how long. The Zinther had anticipated resistance in some form, but not the level of determination humanity had displayed. As he looked at the small group of survivors gathered around him, a mix of scientists, military personnel, and civilians who had managed to escape the mind control serum's grasp, Max knew that their survival depended not only on the counteragent but on something else, something more profound. "Max, we've got a situation." Ella's voice crackled over the comm. She sounded breathless, frantic. Max's eyes shot up from his work. "What happened?" "I've been analyzing the data from the Zinther network," Ella continued. "It's worse than we thought. There's an internal fracture among their ranks. Some of the Zinther are beginning to question their methods." Max's heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean, question?" "Exactly what it sounds like," Ella replied, her voice tinged with disbelief. "There's a faction within the Zinther, led by someone named Zyrith. They're not happy about using the mind control serum on humans. They think it's wrong. They want to pull out and negotiate a peaceful resolution." Max leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling in disbelief. This was unexpected. The Zinther had been a race of ruthless conquerors. Why would one of them suddenly choose peace over domination? It didn't make sense. Could they be lying to us? Max asked, trying to make sense of the new information. "I don't think so," Ella said. "I've been digging into their communications, and there's too much inconsistency. It feels real, miss. This Zyrith, he might be our key." Max stood up, a wave of thought crashing over him. "We need to find him. If there's a chance that we can get inside their ranks, that's our best shot at surviving this." The next few hours were spent planning. With the facility's communications compromised by the Zinther, Max and the small resistance group had no choice but to act on their own. Ella worked tirelessly to locate Zyrith's location, hacking into the aliens' encrypted signals. There were only so many places Zyrith could hide, and time was quickly running out. Finally, the breakthrough came. "Got him," Ella said, her voice a little calmer than before. "Zyrith's ship is docked in a remote location about 150 miles east of here. If we move now, we can make it before the Zinther realize what we're doing." Max's heart raced. This was the moment of truth. If they could get to Zyrith and convince him to help them, the tide of the war could shift. If not, they would be swallowed whole by the Zinther's unrelenting march. Max looked over at his team, their faces a mixture of exhaustion and determination. They knew the stakes. This was no longer just about survival. It was about hope. About restoring humanity's will to fight. "Let's move out," Max said, his voice firm. "We don't have much time." The journey to the remote location where Zyrith's ship was hidden was treacherous. Every corner of the Earth now felt like a battleground, as Zinther-controlled forces combed through cities, looking for any signs of rebellion. As Max and his group trekked through abandoned forests and deserted towns, they encountered small pockets of resistance, humans who had managed to escape the serum's grip, who were doing whatever they could to fight back. These were the unsung heroes, the ones who had not yet given in to the Zinther's will. But Max knew they couldn't hold out forever. The Zinther were already planning their next move. If they were going to have a chance at defeating the alien invaders, they needed the help of Zyrith and the faction of rebels within the Zinther. After a day of travel, they arrived at the hidden base. It was a small, desolate outpost located deep within a mountain range. The air was thick with tension as Max approached the entrance, his heart pounding with anticipation. Zyrith's ship was smaller than Max had imagined. It was sleek, almost organic in design, but the colors of its surface shifted subtly, blending into the natural surroundings. The ship was almost alive, an extension of the alien race itself. Inside, they found Zyrith, tall, slender, and wearing the dark, reflective armor of the Zinther. He didn't look like the conqueror Max had expected. He looked conflicted. "You are Max Carter," Zyrith said, his voice low and steady, but there was a hint of weariness in his tone. The human who still resists the serum. Max nodded, trying to hide his surprise. And you are Zyrith, the one who disagrees with the Zinther's methods. Zyrith regarded him silently for a moment, his eyes narrowing. I have seen what the serum does to your species. It is inhumane. I cannot stand by and watch it continue. Max stepped closer, his voice urgent. We need your help, Zyrith. The Zinther's mind control serum is not perfect on humans. We've found a way to reverse its effects, but we need to know everything you can tell us about how it works. We need to act fast. Zyrith's gaze softened, a glimmer of hope in his eyes. You're right. There is a flaw in our serum, a weakness we never anticipated. It is not a matter of perfecting the formula. It is a matter of recalibrating it, understanding your minds better than we did before. Max felt a surge of relief. This was it. The Zinther's arrogance had been their undoing. Then help us, Max said. Help us fight back before it's too late. Zyrith stood up, his tall frame looming over Max. I will help you, Max Carter. But be warned, there are those in my ranks who will never accept this. The true battle lies ahead. We are already marked for treason. Max nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. They had a chance now, a real chance. But it would come at a price. Then we'll fight together, Max said, determination in his voice. Humanity has nothing left to lose. The air was thick with tension as Max Carter and the resistance group, now bolstered by Zyrith and his small faction of Zinther rebels, prepared for the final confrontation. The battle to free humanity from the Zinther's mind control was coming to a head, and they had one shot to end it. If they failed, Earth would be lost, enslaved by the very serum the Zinther had perfected. Max stared out at the barren landscape stretching before them. The Zinther had already begun their assault on Earth's major cities, pushing forward with waves of controlled humans to overwhelm the remaining pockets of resistance. They had one advantage. They had intercepted critical intelligence about the Zinther's command structure, thanks to Zyrith. The Zinther's central command station, the hub of their mind control system, was located beneath a massive compound in the heart of what used to be Chicago. The clock was ticking. Max, we're ready. Ella's voice came through the comms, pulling him back from his thoughts. Good. Let's move, Max replied. His voice was steady, but inside, the stakes felt heavier than ever before. If they succeeded, humanity would reclaim its future. If they failed, they would be just another conquered species in the Zinther's galactic empire. The final operation was a blend of desperation and hope. Using the counteragent Max had developed, they had a limited window of time before the serum's effects on the human mind would become irreversible. They also needed to destroy the Zinther's central mind control system, the very nerve center that allowed them to dominate humanity's thoughts and actions. The Zinther had spread their serum far and wide, but if they could disable this central system, the mind-controlled humans could be freed. Zyrith, standing tall and ever watchful, had proved invaluable. He knew the layout of the Zinther's base and had given them a detailed map of the compound's underground levels. But the compound was heavily guarded. Even with Zyrith's help, they would face fierce resistance from Zinther-controlled soldiers, humans who had been subjected to the serum's influence. Max's mind raced as they made their way to the entrance of the compound, a steel monstrosity built deep underground. His team was well armed, but the true power lay in the counteragent he carried with him. One small vial of the solution could disrupt the Zinther's hold over any mind-controlled human, but it needed to be used in the right place and at the right time. As they infiltrated the compound, avoiding patrols and silently neutralizing the guards, the Resistance's presence became a storm brewing just beneath the surface. Max could feel the urgency in every step. They had to reach the central core before the Zinther realized what was happening. You're with me, Zyrith, Max ordered. We get to the central control station. Ella, you handle the perimeter, keep our backs covered. Got it, Ella replied. Be careful, Max. The further they ventured into the compound, the more unsettling it became. The walls pulsed with a strange energy. It wasn't just alien technology, it was alive, sentient, linked to the very beings who had created it. The Zinther had built this place to be impenetrable, to break humanity's will once and for all. But they hadn't counted on one thing: humanity's stubborn refusal to be controlled. They reached the heart of the compound, an enormous control room, filled with alien consoles, organic interfaces, and neural links. The air was thick with the hum of energy flowing through the system, as though the very building was alive and conscious. In the center of the room was a massive, alien structure that served as the control nexus, its tendrils extending into the ground, connected to the global network of mind-controlled humans. It was here that the battle for humanity's future would be decided. "We're in position," Zyrith said, his voice a low growl as he scanned the room for threats. "But we won't have much time. The Zinther will be on to us any minute." Max nodded, his eyes focused on the control nexus. The central system had to be destroyed, completely. They could not allow it to fall into the wrong hands. With a steady hand, Max held out the vial of counteragent, his fingers trembling with anticipation. This wasn't just a weapon, it was humanity's salvation. "Ella, we need you to get to the backup generators. Once we disable the central system, we'll need you to shut down their power grid to keep them from reactivating it." Ella's voice crackled over the comm. "Understood. Just don't take too long, okay?" Max turned to Zyrith. "We have one shot at this. Once the counteragent is released, the Zinther's control over the mind-controlled humans will begin to falter. But it won't be immediate. We need to create as much chaos as we can." Zyrith gave a stiff nod, his posture unwavering. "I've lived through wars, Max. Let's make this count." With a deep breath, Max approached the heart of the Zinther's control system. The moment he released the counteragent, a soft blue mist spread out, filling the room with a faint glow. He could already feel the effects taking hold. The hum in the air shifted, and the pulsating energy of the compound seemed to slow. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, all at once, the control nexus flared to life, the walls of the room vibrating as if in protest. Max barely had time to react as the first wave of Zinther-controlled soldiers burst into the room, weapons raised and ready to kill. "Stay close," Max shouted, pulling his pistol from its holster and firing at the nearest soldier. The shot was clean, but the Zinther were relentless. The room filled with the sound of gunfire, the harsh echoes of chaos as the resistance fought tooth and nail against the mind-controlled soldiers. But something strange was happening. As the counteragent worked its way through the compound system, the mind-controlled humans began to regain their faculties. One by one, they hesitated, confusion flickering in their eyes as the control over them started to wane. The Zinther were losing their grip. "Max, it's working." Ella's voice sounded in his ear, full of urgency. "The humans are waking up. The serum's losing its power." Max didn't waste a second. "Keep pushing. We can win this." The Zinther fought back with vicious fury, but the tide had already turned. Resistance fighters, now freed from the serum's grasp, began to join the fray, turning the odds in their favor. The compound was descending into a battlefield, the air thick with the sounds of clashing gunfire and the shouts of soldiers who had finally regained their autonomy. Max and Zyrith pushed toward the central control nexus, working together to destroy the core that held the Zinther's control over humanity. It was a delicate process. One wrong move, and the entire system could collapse, taking Earth with it. "Almost there," Max said, his fingers flying over the alien consoles. "Do it, Max," Zyrith urged. With one final push, Max activated the self-destruct sequence, triggering an explosion that reverberated through the entire compound. The central control system began to collapse, its tendrils of control unraveling. The Zinther's grip over the human race shattered. As the compound crumbled around them, Max could only watch in disbelief. They had done it. The Zinther were retreating, their mind control system disabled. Humanity had been freed. The survivors, human and Zinther rebel alike, stood together amidst the wreckage, victorious but weary. The cost had been high, but Earth was no longer enslaved. Max looked at Zyrith, who was standing solemnly beside him. "You saved us, Zyrith. Earth owes you more than we can ever repay." Zyrith's eyes softened, and for the first time, Max saw the alien not as an enemy, but as an ally. You fought for your freedom, Max Carter. That's something we could never have taken from you. The world would rebuild, but the scars of war would remain. The Zinthers' reign had ended, but the struggle for humanity's future was far from over. There would be others who would come, other alien forces who sought control. But the human spirit, once tested, had proven its resilience. And for now, that was enough. The Zinther have been defeated, but the war for humanity's freedom is far from over. As Earth rebuilds, who will rise to defend it? Join the fight, because the next battle is already on the horizon. Will you stand for humanity's freedom?